You ever find yourself with too many plants and nowhere to put them? Who am I kidding? Of course you do. We all do. Well, that's exactly the situation I find myself in today, where I've got no room in this greenhouse and a whole heap of plants that are going to need to come in very soon. So join me now as we embark on the Arizine Cactarium spring clean out. I'm going to be going through everything, doing some odd jobs, and along the way talking a whole lot about the weird and wonderful plants that I unearth as I dig into the deepest and darkest corners of this place. I'm Michael from Arizine. Let's get stuck right in. Just to give you a bit of scope of the issues that we're dealing with, well, I've got all those massive mature caudex plants that I picked up in the caudex plant haul video from a few weeks ago. Just some random Trichocereus species that are sitting in pots out the front of the greenhouse. I've got trays of things just lying around the garden, and then where I grow all my seedlings, I've just got pots upon pots upon pots of little seedlings that are going to need to be divided up and hardened off in the coming months. Hundreds of them. And then I've got thousands more seeds to sow. So the urgency is real. I've already started. I've been throwing a few things out, diseased things, ugly things, dead stuff. Squish, see you later, pseudolithos. All right, no time to delay. Let's jump in. Got myself another shelf. Going to expand this section, move some more cacti out here, shuffle a few things around. Time to expose these plants to the elements. So, some really interesting plants that I want to talk about here. For a large part, these guys are Trichocereus hybrids, and at least in many instances with some of those mutant genetics that I talked about in my mutant cactus video. Some of them aren't showing any mutant traits like this one just yet, but some of them really quite interesting. For example, have a look at this guy. Now, grafted, I would call myself a competent, not stellar grafter, but this, you can see that kind of weird, knobbly, almost melty look. Why do we graft plants? Well, there's really three reasons. The first of those is about plants that are weak on their own roots. They might be variegated, they might just be not particularly vigorous. Put them on a more vigorous rootstock and they'll grow happier and more healthy. Second reason we might graft a plant is if we want to speed up its growth. A lot of cacti are very slow growing. Put them on something quick like this Cactus geometricans, and suddenly you can get a bit of a growth explosion. And the third reason ties into that second one. It's all about propagation. If you want to make a lot of a plant in a relatively short period of time, grafting might be the way to go. From memory, I think this guy's roots failed on him, so that's why he ended up stuck at the top of this. What a little beauty. Hopefully going to put on a bit more size this growing season. Also, over here, I've got something else that's pretty cool. You can see a very lightly variegated Trichocereus. Interesting, this is a hybrid. Not exactly sure what the parentage is, but what you find is that often hybrids between two different species can produce variegated plants more frequently. Really interesting. Whether or not this will become more or less variegated over time, I guess time will tell. Now I want to share with you this really cool seedling I've come across just now. This is called Rauhocereus riosaniensis, and when it gets bigger, this amazing plant has these almost geometric polygonal shaped tubercles all down the spine. Really an amazing form. But that's not what I'm showing you today. This guy hasn't grown into that stage yet. As you can see, it's been raining, and when it rains, when it gets wet, this plant, the spines become the most immaculate black color. Really heavy metal stuff. I love it. Now, the other thing is a little bit less fortunate. It has been exposed to the weather all through the winter, and as you can see, developed a little bit of rust fungus. Now, I do have a systemic fungicide here that I'm going to blast this with. I'll do it for illustrative purposes right now, and I'll do it again when it's a bit drier. Here we go. Ooh, give it a real cranking. All right, hopefully that's going to get in there now and take care of the fungus, and probably end up as just a cosmetic defect. If it doesn't show any signs of improving, I'll give it another blast in about a week or so. Anyway, let's hope this guy pulls through. If it doesn't, I've got a few more, so it's not a huge deal. That's Rauhocereus riosaniensis. This is the ubiquitous cactus grusonii. See them everywhere in landscapes. They can get quite large, turn into big barrels. The reason I'm showing you this is because there's, I don't know, I suppose a fun little story behind this guy, because this plant originates from the Royal Botanic Gardens in Sydney. They've got some very large clusters of cactus grusonii out the front gate, and I visited one day, visited the succulent gardens there, and saw these had seed pods all over them, and I thought, hey, you know what, why not? Harvested a seed pod, took it home, end result is this little guy. So although this is a very common plant in cultivation, I love my cactus grusonii, golden barrel, just because of where it came from. Probably needs a repot though, when I get some time. Success! Let's move on to the next part of the greenhouse. Now, clearing those cacti out has enabled me to consolidate some things, move some pots around, start making a bit of space, which is great. And also, sometimes you kind of stumble across things that you'd forgotten all about. Just like this unpotted Cissus tuberosa. Looked like a bit of a dead stick of a thing, but it's currently dormant. Now, this is a relative of the grape. It's from the Vitaceae family. And when the weather warms up, what it'll do is it'll send out a vine. And on that vine, there'll be these kind of lumpy nodules. Now, if you detach those nodules, they'll grow into whole new plants. And that probably explains why I've got so many of them that I've never gotten around to potting. Because I have a heap of them in pots as well. Also, stumbled across this little chap. This is Adenium socotrannum, just a baby. This one's 2 years old. Adenium socotrannum is a subspecies of Adenium obesum, and in this case, they grow into these very fat, round, caudiciform trunks and have the most beautiful pink flowers. They're from the island of Socotra in the Indian Ocean. What this is, though, is it's evidence of just how far my seed sowing practice has come in just a fairly short span of time. Like I said, this is 2 years old. One of the reasons that I need to make space out here is because I've got 1 million seedlings that need to come out here very soon. And amongst those seedlings, I have more Adenium socotrannum. These, on the other hand, are 10 months old. Let's compare them. 2 years, 10 months. You can see what a bit of practice and a bit of dedication can do in terms of how well we can grow plants. Fantastic. Look at how fat they are. Can't wait to keep growing these in their own pots. Almost bursting out of this one. Anyway, I'm going to keep shuffling things around, see what other interesting things show up. One of the great things about tidying up the greenhouse is when you come across a hidden secret, something that you didn't know was there. And that's exactly the case for this pretty gnarled up Euphorbia obesa hybrid. It's one of the first succulents I ever owned, which is why I hang on to it despite its fairly hideous appearance. About a year or so ago, some chewing insect got into the growth point, hollowed it out, and now as a result it's sending out all these little pups around the perimeter. But that's not why I'm showing it to you today, because taking it down off the shelf, I found it's been harbouring its own little secret. Have a look beneath the rim of the pot. You can see at some point it's had babies. 2 little obesa seedlings just sitting there growing happily in whatever conditions that they're enduring. How good's that? Now, this is a plant that is in desperate need of a repot, and hopefully this year I can give it a bit more love that it deserves. Hope this shelf is going to hold this weight. It should. If it doesn't, there's going to be a lot of dead plants. Looks ace. Now up on that shelf, this pretty wild Euphorbia lactea crest used to live, but as you can see, at some point a black house spider, maybe a family of them moved in. It's covered in cobwebs. Pretty sure the spider's still in there somewhere. And also some sort of pest or fungus has gotten in and started turning brown. So this is a plant that needs a bit of care and a bit of love. When I bought it, it was probably only 15 centimeters across, and it's gone wild in the interim. I'm gonna hack it right back down, try and find some healthy plants to propagate this and start over again. It's gonna bleed like an absolute bastard though. A lot of white latex, so I'm gonna need to be careful, don't get this stuff certainly in my eyes or my mouth, preferably not on my skin either. Anyway, let's hack this guy up. Try not to get bitten by a spider in the process. Here we go. All right, let's hack into it. If we're lucky, the spider might make an appearance. Now this is gonna bleed profusely. It's gonna be horrible. Look at that. Thick white latex. Everything I'm seeing so far is still pretty diseased. Seems to be only surface level, but do I really want to take the risk with my plants? That's the question. I'll do one more cut, and if I don't find anything that's particularly good to look at, I think it might be time to bin this old boy. Let's make it a big one. The smell, it's acrid. Now, all of these are infected. So, I think it's time to say bye-bye to this grand old Euphorbia lactea cristata. See you later, buddy. Won't come out of its pot. Gonna have to get a bit more vigorous. Be back in a sec. An inglorious end to a magnificent plant. Disgustingly, ants had taken up nest in the pot as well. Not necessarily bad for the plant, but pretty gross. Anyway, see you later, old buddy. Now it's time to find the big old Fockea edulis at home. Got a shelf just behind me where I've got other members of the Euphorbias family, so might let it go join its brothers and sisters. Not quite as pride of place as the high shelf up there, but I'm a bit worried that its size might be just a bit too much for that shelf to bear. So we'll bung it over here, see how it looks. Beautiful. Could probably do with a bit of a tidy up, but for now I reckon that'll be perfect. Spending a bit of time out here today, I've been putting like plants together as much as I possibly can, bringing together, for example, the Euphorbias. And the joyful thing about that is I'm starting to see, as the weather warms up, they're starting to flower. Like you can see this Euphorbia obesa here with a few little flowers, this Bupleurifolia with the same thing. even 2 little flowers on this Euphorbia stellospina. Now the thing I love especially about this time of year is this is when you really get to play mad scientist. Most of these plants are either male or female, and joyfully they all hybridize with each other. And so in the next couple of weeks I'm going to go absolutely mad with my paintbrush, see what weird and wonderful concoctions I can come up with. What does it look like when you combine this guy perhaps with this guy? Give me a few months and we might find out, hey? So it's been a pretty long day, worked pretty hard, and for the most part the process is finished. Probably needs a little bit more work just to get rid of the rubbish lying around the place. But the plants are in their place now, and we've discovered a few interesting things along the way. Now I'm going to just show you where everything's ended up. For example, this now is our cactus section, plants that I don't really want to keep in the rain for one reason or another. We have some caudiciform plants, including a few members of the cucumber family. This is where we're keeping our asclepiads and that mighty Fockea at the back. An assortment of things that like the sun, aloes, cyphostemas, some comophoras. Up here is the hospital shelf. We've got some plants that are either callousing off, a few oddities that we discovered on our way, and some cuttings that are in the process of taking root. Down here we've got some adenias, some shade-loving plants along the back shelf. As you can see, huge collection of Euphorbias here. And then this is where some of the larger plants live. Plants that didn't necessarily make it onto the top shelf, which, as you can see, is starting to take shape. The bulk of the cacti are out the front, as you can see, as well as a few random things like these boswellia that I knew would enjoy a bit of rain. So that's all done now. Now the greenhouse is probably in more of a state of chaos now than when I started this morning, but the good news is I've actually got a little bit of space that I can expand into now. Those hundreds of seedlings sitting there waiting to come out here might have a little bit of a chance. Now, if you've got any questions, probably not about tidying, but certainly if you've got any questions about the plants you've seen today or the processes involved, by all means, shoot me a question in the comments. You can also hit me up at Instagram at bayou.brothers, or, you know, if you want to, you could subscribe. Up to you. That's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the show. See you next time, and happy growing.